I'm Dylan Burns, war journalist and Twitch streamer. I'm again here with IRI, legislative commentator on Twitch and YouTube, and the ever so lovely Riley Grace Roshong, who has a history working on, I know, multiple campaigns. She was involved in the campaign to elect the now governor of Maryland, turning Maryland from a red governorship to a blue governorship. We were at the party where that was announced with the balloons falling from the ceiling. It was a great time.
That's right, we were.
We were. You invited me.
Yeah.
It was a fantastic time. What was it like canvassing today in Ohio, and why did you come out to Ohio to canvass?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, Dylan and IRI. I mean, like, you know, so why did I come out here? First, I mean, this is my home state, you know, like this is where I was born and raised. Granted, Cincinnati, bit of a hop and a skip away from Sandusky, Ohio, like the Huron sort of area. But I mean, like I came out here because, you know, first and foremost, like this is my home state, you know, like this is where I was born and I have a really deep invested interest in it. Also, I came out because my mother, Alicia Roshong, is running for the 89th district up for the State House of Representatives in Ohio. So, you know, I came out with her so I could be able to support her in that as well. And I have a lot of really good hope for her. She's being supported by the state Democratic Party. And there's a lot of really good promise about her being able to flip a current red seat in the House over to blue. So
that's due to redistricting and a little bit of back and forth Republican controversy.
Yes, so she's uncontested in her primary, but but the Republicans are not uncontested in their primary. So they're duking it out right now. But you know, we're out here, we're still working. We want to make sure we give it as good a run as we can.
What was it like? I understand you canvassed today?
Yes.
What was it like canvassing in Ohio after being away in the better state like Maryland for so long?
Well, I don't know about that one. That's a whole other.
Well,
anyway,
that's not debatable. That's as an interviewer, I have to call out lies and misinformation, and sorry, that's just a fact.
don't make me pick between my two favorite states. All right.
Well, I'm picking for you.
I've knocked doors in other states and my home state, like my own neighborhoods and stuff. So I know it's a different vibe. So like, yeah, what was that like?
So I mean, like honestly, I'll compare with like my experience door knocking in Maryland last year, or last year, 2 years ago. It's been a whirlwind of a couple of years. When I door knocked for like Westmore and other campaigns around that same time. So my experience door knocking today was actually like really pleasant. I was able to get talked to a decent amount of people, and overall I think that this was an incredibly blue area for us to canvass in.
I saw a lot of BLM signs.
Yes, there are a lot of BLM signs. I did see one like trans rights flag, which was like you know, it's something that we talk about a lot online, but seeing people like kind of represent that IRL is still like relatively newer.
Sure.
So I thought that was pretty exceptional. But yeah, I mean, like most of the people, I think everyone I spoke to said that they were already registered to vote, which was great. Like they were, you know, it wasn't like I don't know, I can't remember the last time. Like, no, like the people here are like really proactively involved, which was really good to see.
Yeah.
And then the issues, there's like a bit of ambiguity about like some of the people's, like their main issues that they were focusing on. Some people said like, oh, you know, I'll research it later. Oh, I'll figure out more later, which, you know, like is probably honestly par for the course for like most working class Americans, especially like younger people where it's like, you know, dealing with school and work and what have you. But a lot of the really common things we saw people care about were they cared about Trump. Honestly, some people just said, like, literally, I'm just voting to get Trump out of office, and that's the only thing I care about.
Hey, whatever works.
Yeah, but then there were a couple other people, like, I had a long conversation with one woman, and she was really, really pleasant to talk to, but she gave me, like, a really, like, in-depth sort of answers. So, like, the main thing she cared about was abortion, but then she talked about, you know, like, taxes were important to her, pharmaceutical prices were important to her, the environment was important to her. And I mean, like, you know, she went down like I don't want to say like a laundry list, but she gave like a couple, but they were meaningful, right? Like they showed me like what a lot of people, I think that she's probably a bit more representative of where especially like older Americans are, who are a bit more left leaning, who aren't like super hard line like MAGA or what have you. But overall, it was really nice. I will say one funny thing that happened was, and this is kind of a good problem to have, right? Was we eventually we were knocking on so many doors. Eventually we came up to knock on one door and the people came out like, oh, sorry, someone already came out and told us about it. And I was like, that's strange because it wasn't reflected in like the app we use, and sort of like, okay, it must have been like a bug or something. But then we went next door. And I mean, like, basically...
That's the line I use, though, when people call me, or I'm like, I already signed up.
Yeah. And so I was wondering about that. So then I went next door, And I talked to another lady, and like one of the nicest ladies I had spoken to literally the entire day, but she was like, yeah, like this awkward guy came out here and like asked us like, hey, like what do y'all care about for the election? And I was like, oh, okay. And so I think that she was talking to someone who was like one of the newer canvassers. And so but it was really nice, because then she was like, okay, but I really want to know what you're doing. And so I was able to be like, oh, well, progressive victory. I mean, like, you know, we're activating young people, like people who probably haven't been as involved in politics before. And we're just trying to get people out to vote. And she was like, oh my God, that is so cool. And it was just like it was like a really wholesome moment, you know? Like a bunch of people who haven't been as involved in politics, like getting into the swing of it, you know?
You know, as we're kind of the first wave of canvassers here in Ohio, and I think we're across the country, the first wave of canvassers are going out. And something that's really important about this first wave is experiencing the inaccessible homes. You know, in the minivan, oh, that house just isn't there anymore. It doesn't exist. I can't find it on the list. Oh, this house has dogs that aren't letting us by. The no trespassing. In a way, and I've been saying this all day, we take it on the chin for the next person who comes after us so they can be more effective.
I mean, like, there are a lot of houses I walked up to, and mind you, like, you know, you always hear, especially online, like, you know, to not judge based off of appearances or what have you, but like, you really do see that come to play when you go out canvassing, because there's a lot of houses you see where there hasn't been a lot of work on them, or there might be, there was one house that we went to where there was like, we don't call the police, and there was like a firearm under it, like it's kind of doormat, and it's like,
you knocked
damn.
on that door?
I knocked on that door.
I stay away when I see like, no trespassing.
No,
I'm like, okay.
Well, I mean,
here's a flyer.
But here's the thing, though. Like, I knocked on the door, and the guy came out, and he was, again, like, super nice. And he was like, oh, yeah, no, like, I'm already registered to vote. Yeah, fuck Trump, and I'll see you at the polls.
Based.
You know, so it's like, you just cannot, I mean, like, you know, sometimes those can be useful heuristics, but, you know, like, that was just a really, to me, like, a really good example where it's like, not what you would necessarily expect.
Yeah, my experience is mostly people don't answer, and that's okay. I don't answer my door very often, but you still leave a flyer, and I've read that it increases turnout by like 1%, even just leaving a flyer.
Sure.
And then a couple people come, we're already registered, but then you have a couple nice conversations, and that makes the whole experience worth it. Just those one or two people. That's it. It could be a guy walking his dogs down the street. So
I had an experience with somebody answering the door. It was an older gentleman, and he made clear to me, like, I'm center right. I'm center right. I voted multiple different ways in each election, but I will not let that man back in the White House. I'm voting against him. It's my main issue. And then that was that. I mean, there's a lot of people that I found here that are, I was concerned that people would forget how bad the Trump presidency is and how worse it would be in a second term, considering not only is, I remember the first term in the lead up to Trump when they were saying, don't worry, he'll surround himself with experts, trying to convince everybody who was kind of concerned. And he did, but then he fired the experts, and then he fired the replacements to the experts, where this time I feel like he has his ducks in a row and he has an idea of what he wants to do. And so that's something that really concerns me, but I was worried that with 3-4 years, you know, people sometimes tend to change their mind about past presidents given a little time. Like Bush has a generally positive approval rating now. Does that mean people now support the Iraq War or support? No, it just means that their opinions have changed. Thankfully, at least in this area, it doesn't seem to be the case.
we have another canvasser who's going to join us, a guest here, content creator, so we'll bring her on here in a sec. We're going to be cycling in some people, guys, so
Welcome.
Hey, hi.
hey, Jasmine, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
With you. Yeah, my name's Jasmine Jafar. I am an Onlyfans creator, and I've never actually done anything like this. It's something I've always wanted to do. I always had a lot of super politically active, very progressive friends in law school. I grew up in Portland, and it feels like I kind of always gravitate towards like that type of person. So I feel like it's interesting that I've done so in this space too, especially since I don't stream politics or anything. And I actually, canvassing is so outside my comfort zone because I don't ever I've never like cold call people or cold approach anyone. So I remember you were like showing me how it was done, and it was really interesting to see like how people responded, because the people that did open the door seemed to overwhelmingly be friendly.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who just wouldn't. I was telling you I wouldn't, because I watched so much creepy doorbell camera footage. And I just feel like I should never open my door now because it's all like something. But it was really nice to just be along for the process.
And how's the whole, like, just being around all these canvassers and all these people that are excited?
I really like it. Like, I was just thinking about how it's a really great way to garner a sense of community. I feel like, you know, especially throughout like our country's history and stuff, and just history in general, a lot of times it seems like those communities were so centered around like religion and stuff. So seeing a lot of people come together and make friends and have a community for something like this is really heartwarming to me, and I would hope more people would do it. It's just so hard to like, it's like no one wants to join a club a lot of the times because it seems like lame, but then once you do it, you're like, this is really fun and more people should do it. So
it takes a lot of guts to come out to one of these things, so I applaud everybody who does it, and most people have a great time.
Am I allowed to ask a question?
Yeah.
All right, I just want to make sure. So like, what motivated you to like come out and do canvassing? Like, what was like the thing that like made you like, yeah, I really want to be involved in this?
I always wanted, like, I was always the person that I never would like have the idea, but if my friends asked me to do something and I felt like it was like a good cause and I should be there, I always do it. Okay. So Kyla reached out to me. I've streamed with Destiny a few times, and I've just been like friends with Pixie and some of the other people that were organizing it, and I was like, yeah, this is definitely something outside my comfort zone. But you know, for a long time while I was on my lawyer, I'm also a lawyer, so, and I never wanted to be a lawyer, but I just did it because I was always just doing what everyone wanted, never wanted to get outside my comfort zone, doing what my parents wanted. So making such a drastic career shift into OnlyFans, now I just tell myself anything outside of my comfort zone, any kind of opportunities I have to just be around different kind of people, do something like this that I feel like is important, I want to always say yes to.
Cool.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question? Are there any top issues for OnlyFans creators that they care about?
Yeah, so internet censorship is like huge for us. Trump in 2018, I believe, signed like SESTA FOSTA, which significantly like, and me coming from the background I did, being in like one of the most privileged groups in society, like lawyers, like growing up, like, you know, that, and then going into like a very marginalized community as sex worker, even though I myself am very privileged in this community, it definitely made me want to use my platform to be like an advocate for those issues, and just seeing how the banking pressures, like regulatory pressures, have increased. There's been a big push for internet censorship, which has been pushing not safe for work creators, online sex workers, more and more into the margins, and pushing some of them to get back out into the streets and to more dangerous situations under the guise of stopping trafficking and child safety, when a lot of the times these bills don't even help that issue because they just push everything underground and they harm consensual sex work. So there's this big issue of conflating consensual sex work with trafficking and child abuse, which
I was about to say, like, I feel like OnlyFans and like sex workers get the same blame as like the border. Like you're blamed for everything that's wrong in society. Like just like our southern border, right? Like all Republicans will say that's where all the problems are. All society's problems come from there.
I mean, every time I go on the internet, like I'm on Instagram, people are like, there are kids on this app, and I'm like, well, you know, like I don't know what I mean. Like it should be a place that adults can go to and like, you know, promote. Like we get banned off everything. We get platformed all the time. Most of the other girls I know have like 3 different phones with so many different accounts, and we're a group that people don't really care about much. So it's not like, oh, this action on the internet has harmed OnlyFans girls. A lot of people don't like us.
Well, and you don't have a voice. You don't have someone pushing back,
and we don't have it's hard for us to organize because we're all so split apart. It's not like we have an OnlyFans headquarters that we go to where we have like networking opportunities a lot, and a lot of people do this secretly, which I totally understand. So getting sex workers to actually get together, organize, be a voting group that people can like be constituents that people actually care about is hard. And a lot of people, but I think with this push that we're getting from the other side of like censoring the internet, like we're always worried, like the only places they let you even post like nudity is the only major platform is X now and Reddit, and people are always worried, like when is Reddit going to pull the plug? What happened with Tumblr? What happened with OnlyFans in 2021 where they were like, oh, we need to ban this kind of content because one of the banks was going to pull out. You know, a lot of sex workers, sorry, I just want to a lot of them, they have issues even because a lot of their banks have like morality clauses. So they will, so they actually get kicked out. Like even accepting OnlyFans money, which is perfectly legal, from like major banks, like Bank of America's done it, Chase has done it. So credit unions seem to be a little bit, so that's like advice that a lot of us get is to start banking with them. We're not allowed on apps like PayPal. We're not allowed on Venmo.
Really?
Yeah, we're not allowed to take, it's against their terms of service. So it's like it's already so hard on social media to like, because we don't, OnlyFans doesn't promote us, we have to promote us, but it seems like every platform wants us off. They want to use us because we garner views and we get big followings, but they, you know, we're the first ones that they're like, yeah, you can't do this, and a lot of sex workers deal with, we never know when like the rug is going to be pulled out from under us. It's not like we're on the internet selling or talking about how our favorite lipstick. That's a much easier thing to do on the internet than promote an OnlyFans account.
You were talking earlier about these websites which sex workers use in order to contact customers independent of working on the street and having someone pull up to them. Why is that important? Is this a safety issue where they're able to filter through who they do business with and who they don't do business with? Why is that important to
so
creators?
One of the big downfalls of one of the big bad consequences of SESTA FOSTA was that it basically cut at sections 230 of the Communications Act, and it made all platforms liable for any facilitation of prostitution, which even if it's consensual. It even cut a lot of sex educators because they're like, oh, what if even advocating for legalization of sex work is now seen as facilitating? So a lot of different kinds of content creators were cut with that. And then also Reddit forums. There was Reddit forums and threads for groups for sex workers who they would do vetting through that. They would talk to each other. They would give each other tips. It was a safety thing. So actually, now that they've done some studies at the effects of SESTA FOSTA now that it's 5 years later, and they're finding that, yeah, it did substantially hurt sex workers' incomes, and a lot of them were forced back onto the streets. A lot of them, there has even been increases in San Francisco in violence committed towards sex workers because it was a way people could screen, and it was a way that we could be in a community without being out in the street because our whole jobs are online. So having Reddit cut, this didn't affect me, but having again, this affects the most marginalized members of the community. So a lot of the violence that's perpetuated on a lot of these people do tend to be the ones that are the most marginalized. So people in the LGBTQ community, people of color, etc. So me being on even if I'm feeling the effects and I'm probably as privileged as you could get into this industry, these effects are wide sweeping.
Did you know all this going into it, or were your eyes open once you got in there?
Yeah, I mean, even though I think I'm more educated than the average person on a lot of stuff that's going on because I'm a lawyer, I remember this bill, and I was just oh, stop human trafficking. If you don't look into it, you're that sounds good, right? You're not gonna sit there and be oh, that's right. So that's a way that they really, but then if you actually look at it and you look at the effects of it and how it's affecting, how it's conflated, there is this idea people have that no one would choose this kind of work, which is just not true. Some people, I don't want anyone in this kind of work. I want us to have opportunity and people to do what they choose, but this idea that all sex workers are abused or pimps or, it's not true. And a lot of these bills conflate consensual sex work with trafficking.
Dang.
Yeah.
Okay.
It feels though, not only is it not that this is not only true about sex workers all being put in, being pimped in this way.
Yeah.
But if anything, it feels like if these platforms are taken down, it could push sex workers to go back to more traditionally pimping type sex work.
It's literally so funny because when SESTA FOSTA was even the Department of Justice spoke out against it. So many human rights, even victims spoke against it. One person said that it was having a bunch of cockroaches and then you turn on the lights and all the cockroaches go into they're all hiding in the shadows now. So yeah, it didn't help. Actually, I think we had one case that was even brought because a lot of the stuff that was illegal before was actually it's the route they pursue anyway. So this legislation did nothing. I think it was used one time and the case was dismissed. So it hasn't even done anything to help real trafficking victims, and it's done a lot to hurt sex workers.
Dang. Well, listen, Riley, Jasmine, thank you guys for coming on here and chat with us about this. We're going to wrap this up.